Welcome to all the fellow educators. Today's topic is something that's very important. Dr. Richard Elmore, a professor at Harvard University, now is retired, was also at Michigan State University, had wrote a book called Instructional Rounds. Another one of my mentors, Dr. Catherine Merceth, had also done this presentation on an instructional core. And I just felt like there are a few things that I've learned from them that I wanted to make sure that we as educators kind of keep in mind regarding the instructional core. Right. The first and foremost, one individual had wrote this, said a quote once, McKinsey, tells us the quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. Right. So you can have this great curriculum, right? And a lot of times I always remind people, everyone always says, well, let's take what this school does and then let's just, and you can't just, it's not cookie cutters. You can't always take that same curriculum that someone else has used, maybe the top school in the state, and then put that right into the inner city and say, hey, look, why is this not working, right? There could be parts in saying what are some of the methods, but again, it's so important to also have the right teachers for that right curriculum. Just like if you have a great coaching mind, if you don't have the right players, then you're not going to be able to win with that system. That's why you'll see that a lot of times when a coach comes or a general manager comes, they're always like, okay, we're going to rebuild. So they're going to take out players, bring in new players, and get the right players for the system that they want to run. So in the same way in education, there are going to be some key components who are so important for us to have that success in education is to make sure the quality of teachers that we have. When we think about what goes on in schools, what should we think about, right? Where should we focus? What should we focus on, and especially in the school? Like, what is it the most important things, right? And so what Dr. Elmore brings up in his research is that there are three major key components, right? The first is you have the content, right? So you want to make sure, okay, what are we going to go ahead and teach? Then you're going to have to make sure, do you have the right teacher? And then the students. Now the students are going to be, the students that you have in that school district. Now the choice, especially for school leaders, right, or for superintendents, or whoever's in the admin aspect of it, is now to make sure which content with which teacher. So making sure we have those three things, right? It's like a triangle, right? If you have the right teacher, they could connect with the students, and then they could teach that content. You have the content. Can you find the right teacher to teach that content? So, and that content, does it develop, or is it strong enough for that group of students? Is it easy for them to understand to that group, for the students that you have at that school district? So having those three connect is going to be huge. So we want to make sure an instructional core are the three things again, and it's a triangle, and hopefully you see that in the small little clip that we have for you, is content goes down with the teacher to the student to the content. It all connects to all three. So that's so important to keep that in mind. So to making sure, there are kind of three principles that we want to make sure in this instructional core, right? So the first one, principle one, increases in student learning occur only as consequences of improvements in the level of content, teachers' knowledge, skill, and student engagement. Again, we're going to break that down. Increases in student learning, when did this happen? Occur as a consequence of improvements in the level of content. So when you start seeing the level of content, we'll really start pinpointing, like, what are we trying to have? You can't just be like, well, this other national standards, we're just going to use that. But even taking that, now putting it into your classroom, to your demographics, to your teacher, and saying that level of content is correct, right? It's proper, it's what we need to do. Teachers' knowledge and skill is very important. So now making sure we have the right content, and now do we have the right teacher who has the knowledge and skill, right, to teach that skill set. So that's number two. And then student engagement, right, which is going to be important. So you'll see that, hey, is that going to be important that now that we know we got the right content, right, and the level of content is correct, you got the teacher with the knowledge and skill set, but at the same time, now you got to make sure, are the students engaged? So I always tell people, if you had to walk in to a classroom when I have a lot of young admins coming in to my building and they're doing their practicum, or even to a teacher and say, hey, how do you know learning is happening? How do you know learning is happening? It's a question I want you to think to yourself. How do you know if I walk in the classroom, right? Some might say, well, it's the objective. It might be seen by making sure we're looking at the exams, the assessments, right? But if in 5-10 minutes, about an individual named Kim Marshall, right? He has a thing where, except coming in 1 or 2 times a year for 40 minutes, a dog and pony show of teacher evaluations, are coming 10-12 times for about 10-15 minutes and then leave. But in those 10-15 minutes, if you could see that learning is happening, what is it that you can pick up to make sure? And what Richard Elmore brings up is the engagement, the conversation that's happening between teacher and student. When they have questions and dialogue back and forth, it's like, okay, kids learning, are they able to understand? Are they able to support a reply to the question that they have, the discussion? Are they scaling the information? Are they having a deeper dive in this conversation? So having that back and forth conversation that that things are improper. And why I say that is, think about this. The book I was talking about, Instructional Rounds, right? What do doctors do? Right? I want you guys to think about this. Is really kind of cool. If anyone's been at the hospital, and I pray that all of you guys are in good health, but if you've ever visited someone, in the mornings they come with the rounds. And sometimes you have a doctor and they have all these residents behind them. A doctor comes in for maybe 5 minutes, 5-minute mask, right? Comes in, patient sitting down, maybe came from another surgery, a day before, now they're in the hospital, the ICU, a regular ward, whatever it is. They'll come and ask and say, the first thing, how are you feeling? Rate yourself, rate yourself 1 to 10. Can you point to which number do you think you are? When is pain? When is it happening? At what time is it happening? Is it happening the whole night? Did you have good sleep? Were you having a tough time? Is there any more other pain? Is it sharp? If is it not? Is it when you move to the right, when you move to the left? Whatever the symptoms are, they ask several key questions. And the answer that they get back, the doctors are looking at that, right? And then what do? After that question's there, they go outside and they're having a discussion. Right? They don't have that discussion in front of the patient because you don't want the patient to start panicking like, oh my God, why did someone say that? The doctor might go back and say, hey, you know what do you think here? The patient said this, the patient said that, they said this about pain, they said this about their tiredness, they feel about from the 2 days ago, how they're feeling now. Whatever those questions that they're asking, hey, and here's the data from the blood pressure, from the blood test. All these other factors, right? So when they're there, they're just asking them. Then they look at all these other factors later, and then they say, hey, this is what we're going to go ahead and do. It's the same thing in education, that when you want to, as an admin, you want to come and say, what are they doing? Okay, I see these conversations, I see this. Now let's go back and look at the assessments later. Let's look at their previous national scores. Let's kind of get putting that together to what you're seeing the lesson plans from a teacher's things. Let's looking at their data, looking at the kids' scores, looking at how they're teaching. What's the objective for that day? Is that really happening? Those conversations and that data plays a big part. So important for those 3 things that are happening in that classroom is so important for that principle 1, right? That principle, that the level of content is huge, that the teacher's knowledge and skill is there, and then that student engagement is there, plays that first big important principle of the instructional core. Number 2 principle, if you change one element of the instructional core, you have to change the other 2, right? Because sometimes then you might say, hey, why is that? If you have teacher content and student, and if you change the curriculum, does that mean you have to change the teacher? No, but you might have to give them new skill sets or new knowledge to make sure they maximize that content. Again, think about that. Because if you change the content, they're going to need some time to get the right skill sets to teach that. Or if you're teaching one math and now you go to, like we had that situation, we had Saxon math and we changed to Singapore math. Because like, oh man, we heard some great things about it, but then you make sure that you also have to teach them the skill sets and the knowledge to make sure they do it well. Or now, if that content changed, you have to get the students and saying, well, are we picking the right curriculum for that group of kids that we have? And if not, are we making sure we have to look at, do they have the right background to be ready to teach that content, right? Do we have that right background to teach the students if they have that? So that's the other part that changes, right? So if you change the content, how that affects the student. Now, if you change the teacher, then the content and student, we got to make sure, does that teacher know the content and the students well, which is going to take some time, right? So you don't have to remove it, but you're going to have to be like, okay, I'm going to have to now tell you about these kids. It's going to take some time, and that's going to play a part. So that's why that learning principle is so important, that all of them have to connect with each other. And then the last principle is task predicts performance, right? The task that we're asking them to accomplish predicts the performance, right? Is that now that we have these three together, what is the objective for that day? What are you trying to get at? What do you want them to learn? How are you going to make them learn that? How are you going to make them understand that? That plays a big key part in having that. And that's why, Richard Elmore talks about 4 questions to focus on in instructional core. What are these 4 questions? The first one is, what is the teacher saying and doing? So when you want to see tasks, and performance, you want to make sure and saying, okay, task predicts performance. What is the teacher saying and doing in the class? Gotta pay attention. What are they doing? Let's see what's going on in that classroom. Number 2, what are the students saying and doing? Right. So now that dialogue we talked about. Okay, what is the teacher doing? Right? How they're talking, because you want to see like, okay, where's the strengths, where the weaknesses is. All right, well, I thought it was a great delivery by the teacher, but how's the students? Why are the students not getting it? What are they saying and doing, right? So that's number 2. The number 3 is, what is the task the teacher has set for the students, right? So now, if you're kind of having a conversation, you've seen them back and forth and saying, okay, let me make sure I pick it up. What was the objective for that day? What was the outcome for the day? I mean, what was the objective, or what SWOT students will be able to, or I can statements, which I prefer. I can statements and say, okay, what was the task that you are asking for, and are they able to be able to do that? And if the students did everything the teacher asked them to do, what would the students leave the classroom knowing how to do? Is the last one. Again, if the students did everything the teacher asked them to do, right? So now you ask, okay, this is what they had to do. What would the students leave the classroom knowing how to do? And I think that's something that is so important to kind of keep in mind. And hopefully if you keep those specific things with the instructional core, hopefully there will be success. So hopefully keep these things in mind and do your best as teachers in making understanding the curriculum, the knowledge, knowing your students, and then and making sure you got the right curriculum and the right attitude to be successful teachers. Thank you.